Hi guys, pollution in big cities. Where is it actually coming from and how is it impacting us? Well, there's a newspaper report out from The Guardian, no less, that sheds some light on where this pollution could actually be coming from. And additionally, there are some figures that are found in terms of how is it actually impacting us or isn't. Stay tuned, I'll explain right after this.
A brown card guy.
Right then, so there was an article out in the Guardian newspaper 2 days ago, August 6th, by Robin McKee, science editor. It was entitled, ULEZ is just the start and similar scheme needed for buildings, expert warn. So straight away, oh my God, I mean, we haven't even finished the struggle against the expansion of ULEZ. And okay, this is not going to be my fight, I'll tell you that right now, because I'm automotive, right? I'm not buildings, I'm not construction, I'm not getting into this, but it's something that you maybe want to start thinking about, is that the next fight is going to be ULEZ for your homes. Yeah, ULEZ for your homes. I mean, this is basically what they're getting at, right? But hang on a minute, don't we already pay tax? Don't we already pay council tax? Don't we already pay all of these things? And now there's going to be ULEZ for your building or your home. Anyway, that's not what the story is about, but that's certainly the implication from that headline. But let's see what this story is actually about. So what they're talking about here is referring to ULEZ, of course, is the fact that, okay, we're making stricter controls on car exhaust. It will only partially improve the quality of air that people breathe in the UK. Now, there's several things, although this is like written by the science editor, but there's several things in this article that to be honest, I fundamentally think are wrong, that I don't agree with. But there are also some very interesting and crucial takeaways that is actually quite relevant, not only to the future argument about houses and where this pollution is coming from as well, but also in terms of the current situation with ULEZ in cars also. So anyway, so I'm going to go through the article and I'm just going to tell you what I think of what the article is saying. So new measures to counter the emissions of nitrogen oxides and many and other air pollutants will also be needed for buildings, heating plants, and many other domestic and industrial sources in future. That's what the article is saying. The warning follows a controversy that has surrounded London's ultra-low emission zone, of course, ULEZ. I'll skip over the next bit. Scientists at the Wolfson Atmospheric Chemistry Laboratories at the University of York stressed the need to maintain air quality, particularly in cities. Air pollution is one of the highest causes of preventable death in the UK, Professor Alistair Lewis told The Observer last week. The National Health Service is run at full stretch all the time, so every extra medical problem has a disproportionate effect. I'm not going to read the rest of that, but what I do want to say, before I move on to the next paragraph, is there's been this video going around about, in this video there's this young guy who's going around with a microphone and asking people, how much does air pollution cost the NHS? How much does it cost the NHS? And people go, oh, well, million, 2 million, 5 million, it's a billion, whatever, and he goes up and up, he goes higher. He's like, he thinks he's Bruce Forsyth, higher, higher, higher. Anyway, he goes up and he tells them, it's 20 billion pounds it's costing the NHS. What would you rather do with that? I see the point that he's trying to make, but actually he's wrong, because if you look into it, it's about 5 billion that actually costs the NHS. You can look this up, you can Google it, and the figures are there. It's 5 billion that it costs the NHS. Put that in context, 10 billion is what obesity costs the NHS. So this is like, obviously, when I say NHS, I mean what it costs them in terms of addressing these illnesses and issues and problems and whatever they might be amongst people. So 5 billion is still a lot, and that is an issue. Now, it does, on the other hand, there is a figure of 19 billion that is resultant from air pollution. That's the cost to the economy. So maybe he's taken that figure and he's saying, oh, that's what it costs the NHS, but he's wrong. But anyway, he may have taken that figure, but you could say, okay, it costs the economy 19 billion, but then the counter argument to that is like, well, how much would it cost the economy if we didn't have road transport? If we didn't have cars and trucks and lorries and vans? And bikes. Anyway, I just wanted to interject that into the middle of this discussion. Continuing on with this, in the next paragraph. In London, there's very little difference between air quality in the inner city and its outer boroughs. Well, actually, I agree with that because that actually is what I found when I did my videos, when I took the air quality meter around the ULEZ zone in inner London, and then I took it around the proposed ULEZ zone in outer London, and I found the air quality outside to be more or less the same, a little bit better in the outer London area, but there you go. At present, both have pollution levels that are far higher than those set as safe standards by the World Health Organization. Who, man? What? Who is saying this? And where is this evidence? Honestly, this thing drives me up the wall. Every time I say, oh, illegal levels, oh, we're at dangerous levels, we're at illegal levels. I can find no evidence of this. Forget about my meter, forget about my little handheld device I'm working, forget about that. Go to the official air quality monitoring stations that are dotted all around the UK, especially in London, but all around the UK, in fact, all around the world. All of their data is available online. I'm not even going to tell you the link because some people say, oh, well, maybe I've just made up a link or maybe I'm just, preferring a link that's giving the... No, you go and Google it, you find out, and you can see. And in fact, some phone apps, some phone weather apps also give you the direct feed, that they give you today's air quality level in your area. That information is being taken from the official air quality monitoring stations. They're all green. They're predominantly green. Sometimes they go into the orange. Very rarely are they seen in the red. So I don't understand where these illegal levels are. And things like, for example, they mentioned that if you say that nitrogen oxide is the biggest thing, which is what they're going to say here, the illegal level of nitrogen oxide emission is 40 micrograms per meters cube. Right? That is the official illegal level. Over a 2-day period in London, I looked at one, because I did this recently when I updated my Everything You Need to Know About ULEZ, the main article on the main homepage of my website, browncarguy.com. Go there. I updated the text and I gave you all the facts and figures and everything that you need to answer some of the arguments pro ULEZ. And in that, I actually stated that, well, this is the illegal level. I pulled up the air quality monitoring data. And it gives you 48 hours worth of data. You looked across the chart and there were all these bars and the bars are very low. So I looked at the highest peak bar. I said, what is this highest peak bar? 22.5. So barely over half the illegal amount. Anyway, so this is the kind of thing that I think this is just scaremongering because there is no public air health emergency, especially not when you've grown up in London in the 70s, I can tell you that much. However, the York team, continuing with the article, the York team said they expected air quality to improve fairly rapidly in London's outer areas as the extension of the city's ULEZ takes effect. But in the central area, it will remain relatively high. I'll come to the second sentence in a bit, but the first sentence, it will rapidly improve the air. How? How will it improve the air? At the moment, you can walk around outside and with my air quality test meter, and you can go and look at the official ones if you want to, but it gives a reading of 5. On the AQI, Air Quality Index, of 5. It's a calibration of 0 to 500. From 0 to 500, and I get a reading of 5. Maximum reading I've ever seen on the roads outside here is 30. That's the maximum. That's 20 below the safety threshold. The first safety threshold of 50 is 20 below that. So I don't see how you're going to improve on that already. Anyway, let's read on. It's one of those things, right? In the central area, it will remain relatively high. Part of the problem lies with the greater congestion of the inner city. Now, before I say the next sentence, I just want to reiterate one point because I get so much of this confusion on the comments in my YouTube channel. And you know what? I'm going to take a sip of tea here. So much confusion. People come on and they think that, whatever other people want to think or whatever, but by and large, the protests are about the extension. By and large, not by and large, but categorically, myself, I'm only objecting to the extension of ULEZ. I have never objected to ULEZ where it is right now. The data says there's 46% improvement in central London because of ULEZ, and in inner London, 21%. So you go, okay, you take that data because we're taking their data because we're also taking their data when it comes to the extension. Because the Jacobs report, the independent Jacobs impact assessment report was commissioned by TfL, so that's also their report, and that report says that there's maximum chance of improvement of 1.3%. So you take that data, you go, all right, 46%, accept it. 21%, accept it. Law of diminishing returns applies. By the time you get to outer London, 1.3%, it's just not worth it. Let's be honest, right? So they say congestion in the inner city. This is the problem. And you know what? I agree with that. I'm born in London. I grew up in central Islington, in central London. I know how bad it is. Vehicles emit more pollutants when braking and accelerating than they do when traveling at steady speed. And this is very interesting. The braking, the tires, and the brakes are responsible. So in fact, they say that 52% of the emissions from road traffic in the city area is actually from braking, from tires, and also from particulates from the tarmac. Only 15% actually comes out of the tailpipe. So all the ULEZ Euro emission standards that applies to our cars with draconian measures that it's putting on our cars and restricting our cars from traveling, only 15% of it, of the pollution that they're targeting, is actually coming out of the exhaust pipe. The rest is coming out of the tires and the brakes, which you will get on EVs as well. Although you will get more tire particulate emissions on EVs, but you will get less braking emissions on EVs. Anyway, vehicles emit more pollutants when braking and accelerating than they do when traveling at a steady speed. So they're accepting the fact that in outer London, it's more sparser, it's more open, the traffic is more free-flowing, there's less braking and accelerating going on, so therefore there's less pollutants going on. So they accept that bit, and yet they say there's very little difference in there, and we can improve the air in the outer London areas, which is, I just don't agree. There is another reason. About half of all the nitrogen dioxide that pollutes central London actually comes from buildings. About half of it, not from vehicles. And while we are taking measures to improve pollution from cars, buses, and lorries, we are not yet tackling those produced by houses, offices, and factories, said Lewis. Was he quoted earlier, Lewis? Who is Lewis? Alistair Lewis, Professor Alistair Lewis, who was from the Wolfson Atmospheric Chemistry Laboratories. So that's what Lewis said. And in fact, although factories, to be honest, you know, like I said, growing up in London in the 70s, right, there were factories, there were industries inside, they're hardly anything now. They've all moved out. It's too expensive for factories to exist in London anyway. So, the particular problem affecting building focuses on the way they are heated. Typical gas boilers and combined heat and power sources produce significant amounts of nitrogen oxides. The latter issue of space heating, as it is known, is going to become increasingly important in coming years, said Lewis. The point was backed by his colleague, Professor James Lee. There will come a time when we will find that we cannot get air pollution levels to go down because we have done as much as we can by making improvements to pollution produced by road vehicles, but still have not tackled space heating and its impact on air quality. There will be an impasse unless we act now. I would argue that we've already done as much as we can at the moment with road transport, and whatever else needs to happen naturally. The natural movement towards electric cars, the natural movement towards fewer cars, the natural movement as public transport improves, which it's not really doing, let's be honest. But, you know, we've already done as much as we can. To do any more is to inflict hardship upon the populations of an urban area. That's what you're doing, really, which basically means the whole urban area will cease to function. Ultimately, this is what that's about, which they don't understand, which of course will kill the economy as well. But anyway, let's carry on with this. The measure of the problem is provided by examining how much nitrogen dioxide pollution is produced by a typical domestic gas boiler in a day. The average output is equivalent of driving a new diesel car for 70 kilometers. It is a non-trivial amount. Yeah, you'll be lucky to get 70 kilometers driven in central London, isn't it? But if you use a gas boiler in a day, you're getting the same pollution. So, and honestly, like when it's winter, when it's cold, there's a lot of heating going on. So this is something that just hasn't been thought through, hasn't been thought about. And in fact, they're just attacking cars because cars are easy to attack. Buildings are much harder to attack. And of course, I am not at any point here suggesting that there should be a ULEZ on residents in buildings, but it needs to be looked at, right? The problem is made worse because many people think that pollution from boilers and other building heating systems will disappear should gas and oil be replaced by hydrogen as a key fuel for keeping our homes, offices, and factories warm. People assume that burning hydrogen is a clean process that provides only water vapor, but that is not the case, said Lewis. The heat of the flame you produce by burning hydrogen causes nitrogen molecules, the main constituent of air, to break apart and form nitrogen oxides, which are pollutants. It is an issue that planners and officials often miss, but it is important. You know what else is important? The need for human beings to have fire. What's the first thing you do when you go camping? You light a fire. What's the first things the cavemen advanced? What's the first thing they had to figure out before they could advance? Not the wheel. That came much later. They needed to figure out how to light a fire. The fire is what humans need, right? So we're getting, my frustration here is that we're getting to a point where we're starting to put the needs or the perceived needs of the climate against the actual needs of the population. And what you're actually saying is, to make the planet safe for humanity, we need to get rid of humanity. I mean, how does that work? That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, the crucial point is that if hydrogen is going to be used as a substitute for fossil fuels, as is planned, is it? Is it? I wasn't aware of this. Anyway, as is planned, then plans need to be put in place immediately to ensure that machines that burn it are designed to limit the pollution they will produce. We need to think about these issues today if we want to keep cutting air pollution in the future. Lee said we need to reach net zero in the near future, but in a way that also keeps air pollution to a minimum. No, we need to meet something like net zero in the future, but in a way that also keeps humanity functioning. Let's be honest. I mean, this is the one thing that we don't seem to understand, is that whilst there's humanity, there is going to be emissions. It's inevitable. But we need to look at how we manage that, okay? That's what it's about. But draconian measures like this are just not going to work. So, by the way, that's that article done. But there was another thing. That article was shared with me by somebody, but somebody also shared me this information as well, which I thought was very, very interesting. This is from the Census 2021, and it's the life expectancy for local areas of the UK between 2001, 2003, and 2017 and 2019. It's absolutely fascinating, because the reason it's fascinating is that if we are to believe the narrative that in London and its surrounding areas there's so much air pollution that it's killing 4,000 people for a start a year, but it's causing death and destruction to humanity on a massive, unprecedented scale that has got the people who basically jumping out of their windows and committing suicide because they can't do anything about it. Actually, they wouldn't care, would they, really? Anyway, but that's a different story. But if there is such an emergency, then when you look at this data that I'm about to tell you, then surely the data will tell you that people living in the London area and the surrounding London area and even in the southeast area probably have the lowest life expectancy of anywhere else in the country, because, you know, the Lake District and Peak District are beautiful, Wales is stunning, Scotland's way up there where the air is beautiful. So surely, because we're having these draconian measures, because it's got this emergency going on, surely because we're all dying here. We're all dying, and we're dying very, very quickly, and that's the problem. And this is what this report should tell us. So let me read to you what the report is actually telling us. Males living in the 4 most southerly regions of England had life expectancies at birth exceeding 80 years. That's the average lifespan in the UK, so okay, that makes sense. Whereas regions of the Midlands and the North fell short of 80 years. London exceeded the Northeast region by almost 3 years. So if you live in London, amongst all this deadly toxic pollution, you can expect to live 3 years longer. That's without the ULEZ expansion. For females, well, that's just men, is it? That's just men. What about the women? Why don't we care about them? For female, a similar divide was evident, with life expectancy significantly higher in the 4 most southerly regions compared with elsewhere. Like males, London exceeded the Northeast region by almost 3 years. So yeah, it's across male, female, across genders. So this is, I mean, it's just, and there's one more. There's a big report and there's lots to read, but I just want to read you the next paragraph as well. Since 2014 to 2016, this is pre the introduction of ULEZ, by the way. ULEZ in Central London was introduced in 2019. Since 2014 to 2016, male life expectancy at birth in London has increased by 6.5 months and by 5 3/4 months for females. These gains were substantially greater than those occurring in any other region. What the heck? This is mind-blowing. And what this tells us is what we've been saying all along, is what my little air quality videos have been saying. The air is fine. It's fine. It's not causing us any problems at all. You've got better quality of life and life expectancy in Southeast and in London than you do anywhere else in the country. I'm going to love hearing your comments on this one.
Brown car guy.
Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these 3 little dots down here and click on thanks. make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.